Some people judge too quickly, mistaking simplicity for weakness. When Barbara Sullivan sneered at Elena Rodriguez in the high-end boutique that afternoon, she had no idea the simple woman was about to call her billionaire CEO husband, a call that would change everything in an instant. Before we continue this incredible story, we're so close to 1,000 subscribers. Help us reach this milestone and build a community that believes in standing up against judgment. Hit subscribe now and be part of something bigger. Elena Rodriguez had always been a woman of simple means. As a dedicated administrative assistant at a local community center, she took pride in her hard work and modest lifestyle. That Wednesday afternoon, she was shopping for a special dress, a rare treat to herself after months of saving. The high-end boutique felt like a different world, with its pristine white walls and carefully curated displays of designer clothing. Elena moved carefully, her eyes bright with excitement, running her fingers delicately over a deep blue cocktail dress she'd been dreaming about for weeks. She didn't notice the eyes watching her, sharp, critical, filled with judgment. Barbara Sullivan, a woman who had never known a day of financial struggle, was surveying Elena with a mixture of disdain and contempt. To Barbara, Elena was an intruder in this world of luxury, a simple woman who clearly didn't belong among the racks of expensive clothing. The tension in the boutique grew thick as Barbara Sullivan's voice cut through the elegant silence. "Excuse me," she said, her perfectly manicured hand gesturing toward Elena, "but I don't think you're shopping in the right place." Elena felt the weight of Barbara's words, the subtle but razor-sharp edge of discrimination masked as concern. She'd experienced these moments before, the sideways glances, the not-so-subtle attempts to make her feel small. But today, something was different. Today, she would not shrink. "I'm looking for a dress," Elena responded evenly, her voice calm but firm. "Is there a problem?" Barbara's laugh was brittle, designed to attract attention. "A dress? In this boutique?" She turned to a nearby saleswoman, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Are we just letting anyone browse now?" The saleswoman looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting between Elena and Barbara. The other shoppers began to take notice, some averting their eyes, others watching with a mix of curiosity and discomfort. "I have every right to be here," Elena said, her spine straightening. She knew the game, the subtle microaggressions designed to chip away at her dignity. But dignity was not something that could be stolen. It could only be given away. Barbara stepped closer, her designer heels clicking against the polished floor. "Some stores have standards," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Not everyone belongs in every space." The underlying message was clear. Elena didn't belong. Her modest clothing, her simple appearance, her very presence was an affront to Barbara's carefully curated world of luxury and exclusivity. Other shoppers began to shift uncomfortably. A few older women exchanged knowing glances. They recognized this dance of discrimination, this performative display of superiority. "Perhaps," the saleswoman intervened weakly, "we could all take a moment to calm down." But Barbara was on a mission. "I've seen her type before," she continued, her voice rising, "always trying to pretend they belong where they clearly don't." The words hung in the air, laden with prejudice and calculated cruelty. Elena felt the familiar heat rising, not of anger, but of determination. She'd worked hard for every opportunity, fought against countless obstacles. This moment was just another challenge to overcome. "Ma'am," Elena said, her voice steady, "I'm here to shop, just like everyone else." Barbara leaned in, her expensive perfume a sharp contrast to her harsh words. "Not everyone can afford these clothes. Some people should know their place." The boutique fell silent. The other shoppers held their breath, watching the confrontation unfold. Elena knew what was happening. This was more than about a dress. This was about power, about who was deemed worthy, about the invisible barriers that some believed should remain unbroken. She reached for her phone, her hand steady. "I think it's time I called my husband," Elena said quietly, her eyes locked with Barbara's. In that moment, everything changed. Barbara's confident smile faltered, just for an instant. Something in Elena's tone suggested that this confrontation was about to take an unexpected turn. The saleswoman looked nervous. The other shoppers leaned in, sensing a dramatic shift was coming. Barbara's certainty began to crack, revealing the fragile ego beneath her carefully constructed exterior. Elena dialed, her fingers pressing each number with deliberate precision. One call would change everything. The boutique seemed to hold its collective breath. Elena's phone call hung in the air, charged with an electricity that made Barbara's confident demeanor begin to crack. Something about the way Elena spoke, calm, controlled, almost expectant, suggested this was far more than a simple phone call. Moments stretched into eternity. The other shoppers, who had moments ago been silent witnesses to Barbara's verbal assault, now watched with a mix of anticipation and growing tension. Barbara's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the slight tremor in her hand, the first hint of uncertainty creeping into her carefully constructed facade. The soft chime of the boutique's door broke the silence. Robert Anderson entered like a force of nature. He wasn't just walking, he was making an entrance that transformed the entire atmosphere of the store. Tailored navy suit, polished shoes that spoke of boardroom victories, and an aura of undeniable authority that seemed to compress the very air around him. A bodyguard followed, his presence a silent exclamation point to Robert's arrival. Elena remained perfectly still, a small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. She didn't need to say a word. Her husband's presence had already rewritten the narrative of the moment. Barbara's world began to visibly shrink. The woman who moments ago had been so certain of her superiority now looked small, insignificant. Her designer outfit, her carefully cultivated attitude of entitlement, all of it suddenly seemed paper thin. The shoppers watched, transfixed. Robert's eyes, sharp, intelligent, calculating, swept across the scene. They lingered on Barbara, then moved to Elena, a look of quiet pride and protective love evident in his gaze. The storm was about to break, and everyone in the boutique knew it. Robert Anderson's voice cut through the boutique like a precision instrument. "I believe my wife was explaining something to you," he said, each word carefully measured, landing with surgical precision. Barbara's world began to unravel. The confident woman who moments ago had been so certain of her superiority now looked like a child caught in an impossible moment. Her designer outfit, her carefully cultivated attitude of entitlement, all of it suddenly seemed paper thin. "Mr. Anderson," the nervous saleswoman interjected, "we weren't expecting—" He silenced her with a single look, not harsh, but absolutely definitive. "This isn't about expectations," Robert said, turning his attention to Barbara. "This is about respect, basic human dignity." The other shoppers watched, transfixed. Some recognized Robert, a prominent CEO known for his philanthropic work and progressive business practices. But today, he wasn't a business titan. He was a husband defending his wife's fundamental right to exist in a space without judgment. "I heard you suggesting my wife doesn't belong here," Robert continued, his voice calm but loaded with quiet fury. "Tell me, exactly what makes someone worthy of shopping in this boutique?" Barbara stammered, her earlier confidence evaporating. I didn't mean what?" Elena interrupted, stepping forward. Her voice was soft, but carried the steel of someone who had weathered countless storms of prejudice. "Didn't mean to make your racism so obvious." The room held its collective breath. Robert placed a supportive hand on Elena's shoulder, not protective, but standing beside her. A subtle but powerful gesture that spoke volumes about their relationship, about mutual respect. "My wife," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the boutique, "is a successful professional. She works hard. She contributes to our community. Her worth isn't determined by the price tag of her clothing or the judgment of someone who believes wealth gives them the right to demean others." Barbara's face turned several shades of red. The other shoppers began to murmur, some nodding in agreement, others looking distinctly uncomfortable. The saleswoman, caught between her commission and her conscience, looked like she wanted to disappear. "You've made a grave mistake today," Robert continued. "Not just in how you treated my wife, but in believing that your perceived social status gives you the right to humiliate another human being." Elena stood tall, her hand briefly touching her husband's, a silent communication of strength and solidarity. "I'm going to ensure," Robert said, his tone now clinical and final, "that you understand the consequences of your actions. This boutique will be informed about your behavior, Your membership will be revoked, and I'll make certain your network understands why." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Barbara's world wasn't just crumbling. It was being systematically dismantled, piece by carefully constructed piece. The silence was deafening. The other shoppers watched, a mix of shock, admiration, and relief washing over them. This wasn't just about one moment of confrontation. This was about standing up against a system that had long allowed such casual cruelty to persist. Elena squeezed her husband's hand. No words were necessary. In that moment, she wasn't just a wife being defended. She was a statement, a living, breathing declaration that dignity cannot be stripped away by ignorance, that respect isn't a privilege to be dispensed by the powerful, but a fundamental right belonging to every human being. Barbara would leave the boutique that day, but she would carry with her a lesson far more expensive than any designer outfit, the understanding that true worth cannot be measured by external appearances, but by the depth of one's character. Robert turned to Elena, a subtle smile acknowledging her strength. She had handled herself with grace long before he arrived. He was simply the exclamation point to her eloquent statement. "Shall we?" he asked, offering his arm. Elena took it, leaving behind a boutique forever changed. The boutique emptied like a deflating balloon, the air thick with unspoken tensions. Whispers followed Barbara as she left, her once confident stride now a desperate retreat. The other shoppers exchanged knowing glances. They had witnessed more than just a personal conflict. This was a moment of profound social reckoning, a small but significant battle in a much larger war against casual prejudice. Elena and Robert stepped outside, the afternoon light casting long, contemplative shadows. They weren't celebrating a victory in the traditional sense. This wasn't about winning or losing, it was about revealing the invisible barriers that people like Barbara constructed and maintained with such casual precision. "Not everyone will learn," Robert said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of years of observation and experience. "But some will, and those some can change everything." Elena nodded, understanding the deeper truth. The incident would ripple far beyond this moment. Robert would send a detailed letter to the boutique's management, not a threat, but a thoughtful critique of their customer treatment policies. He understood that true change comes through systematic approach, through education, not just dramatic confrontation. Her phone began to buzz, a symphony of digital connections. Colleagues, friends, network connections. Word travels at the speed of light in the age of instant communication. But Elena wasn't interested in public spectacle or viral moments. Her power had always been in her quiet, unwavering dignity. "Some will see," she told Robert, her voice a mixture of hope and determination. "That respect isn't something you earn through status or wealth. It's something you're born with, something fundamental to human dignity." The boutique would remember this day, not as a moment of drama, but as a turning point. Barbara represented more than just herself. She was a symbol of a system built on casual prejudice, of unspoken rules that marginalized based on appearance and perceived social status. Elena represented something entirely different, a quiet revolution of dignity, of standing firm without anger, of challenging systemic injustice with grace and intelligence. Their story wasn't about winning or losing. It was about revealing the invisible barriers that divide us, revealing the power of self-respect, revealing that true strength isn't about volume or aggression, but about clarity of purpose and unwavering integrity. As they walked away, the city moved around them, indifferent yet alive, with countless untold stories of struggle and triumph. Another day, another moment in the ongoing work of breaking down walls that should never have existed. Robert understood something profound in that moment. Change doesn't happen through grand gestures or viral moments. It happens in these small, almost imperceptible shifts. A conversation, a stand taken, a moment of unexpected dignity. Elena's phone continued to buzz, messages of support, messages of shared experience, each notification a testament to the power of speaking truth, of standing tall when the world tries to make you small. Some stories end, some stories continue, and some stories become movements. This was a continuation, a thread in a larger tapestry of human resilience, a reminder that dignity cannot be stripped away, that respect is not a privilege to be dispensed, but a fundamental right. As the afternoon light began to soften, Elena and Robert walked on, not as conquerors, but as continuers of a conversation much larger than themselves. A conversation about who we are, who we can be, and the world we choose to create with each small, courageous act. Some moments change everything. This was one of those moments. Have you ever felt invisible, judged by someone who knows nothing about you? Click subscribe now and witness stories that shatter expectations. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments and join a community that believes one moment can change everything. Have you experienced a moment that transformed your life? A time when everything seemed impossible, but you found strength you didn't know you possessed? Our channel is more than just stories. It's a movement of resilience, hope, and unexpected triumph. Share your journey. Break the silence. Challenge the narratives others try to write for you. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Be part of a community that sees beyond appearances and believes in the power of human dignity. Your story matters. Your voice counts. Your experience can inspire thousands.